The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have with us today two members representing James City and York County. Welcome, Senator Tommy Norment. Good to see you again, sir.
Woody, it's a delight to see you, my friend.
Delegate Monty Mason, welcome to the General Assembly.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me.
One of the new members of the freshman delegation. Tell us how things are going for you as a newbie.
It's exciting. Nothing can prepare you for the pace up here, but I really enjoy it. I think I enjoy the fact that you have no idea who's going to walk through your door next and what they want to talk about. And so it's a great educational opportunity, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
And you've been successful in moving up in the ranks. You're now, what, number 93?
At this pace, I'll be down in Senator Norment's territory soon. But in the 93rd district, I am number 93, and I think maybe soon to be 92. So.
And your committee assignments are what?
I got a very fortunate committee assignments. I was put on the Courts of Justice Committee, which was exciting. It's a lot of volume, a lot of legislation. I was also assigned to the criminal subcommittee as well as judicial appointments. And as a non-lawyer, it's a lot of work to prepare for it. But it's been a great situation to this point. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. A lot of meaty issues, and so it's a lot of work. But it's a good opportunity for a freshman. And I'm also in county, cities, and towns, which impacts our localities. And having a background with the Economic Development Authority in the city of Williamsburg and working with city councils and the boards of supervisors, I've felt fortunate to get that assignment as well.
Well, tell us a little bit about your constituency in James City and York County.
Okay. And I do have the city of Williamsburg, parts of James City, parts of York, and then northern Newport News. So it's a very broad constituency. I said as I was running, I represent a lot of elderly and retirees, and I represent the College of William and Mary. I represent northern Newport News, and I represent Kings Mill. And so it's a broad and differing district, but I very much enjoy it.
Great. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Senator, tell us what's going on in that august body across the way.
Well, I appreciate your description of it. Sometimes we're so august that we become sophomoric in our approach towards things. First of all, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to work with Monty as the new delegate on it. We do have some overlapping jurisdictions. I would say there is hope out there, Monty. I started out in seat number 39 in the Senate. I was over in the corner so far that it was 4 years before I knew anybody was on the other side of the chamber because I couldn't see them on that. I'm enjoying the opportunity to continue to represent a fairly diverse district. It includes 11 or 12 different jurisdictions running from the inner core of Hampton, just south of Suffolk a little bit, as I said, it almost from the Richmond City lines to the North Carolina lines. A lot of diversity. Was fortunate when they did do redistricting, even though they took me out of my beloved city of Williamsburg. I've still felt a stewardship responsibility to that city. As you know, I teach at the College of William and Mary. I'm on the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation Board of Trustees, and I feel a real sense of responsibility, even though I don't represent them in the ballot box. I do try to represent them very avidly up here in the Senate of Virginia. Also, I kept a major portion of James City County. That's important because that's been my home for over 55 years. I served one term on the James City County Board of Supervisors. It was a great learning experience. I learned a lot about local government. I learned a lot about budgetary process, but I have a genuine affection for that area. I love all of the jurisdictions that I represent. It's just maybe I have a little more affection for the community that I grew up in.
And you're still the Republican Senate leader. I know your committee assignments have not changed as a result of what occurred yesterday, but I think you were a little bit disappointed in the actions that were taken yesterday in the Senate.
I think disappointment is probably a fair term as any. Politics to me is a business. I cannot afford to get emotionally invested in it. I cannot harbor ill will. So disappointment, but I will tell you by the time that I woke up this morning, that disappointment had dissipated, and I'm refocused on what we need to do for the balance of this session. I said a lot yesterday, probably put 39 senators to sleep that I was talking so much. But we have a responsibility up here, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're in the House or the Senate. The citizens of Virginia do not expect us to start looking like Washington, D.C. We're only here for 60 days. We are here to do the work of the people, and we need to focus on moving legislative agendas forward and improving the quality of life in Virginia. We may debate what the appropriate quality of life in Virginia should look like through the legislative process, but we need to stay focused on that, and the time for petty grievances is past.
And an example of that, Delegate Mason, is a matter that both you and the Senator are working on in terms of transportation corridors. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. Well, Hampton Roads Transit has asked us to look at a peninsula corridor transportation study, focusing particularly on mass transit. And it looks at high-capacity guideway lanes and just trying to study, what would work here. The peninsula is very linear. So it seems as if it would be a good opportunity, whether it's high travel bus lanes or light rail down the road. But this is the first step to try to determine what we have today and what we could have. As I met with the leadership in Newport News, they suggested to me that the transit capabilities they have are about 85% reliable, which doesn't seem bad unless you are an employer or an employee depending upon that transit to get to work every day or to have your employees appear. That 15% that you can't guarantee being on time to work is just unacceptable. A lot of the folks that I represent in northern Newport News, if they want to get on a bus and go to downtown, they have to change 2, maybe 3 times, and it could take them upwards of an hour. So this really looks at maximizing the efficiencies, where collection locations where stops should be, how you then run as far as you can between stops. Just look at what we have, what needs to be thrown out, and what we could do better. As a part of the transportation package, it's all about relieving congestion. Well, transit is kind of the parallel path for that, helping to take people off of the interstates and the roadways and put them in mass transit.
And of course, transit is very important to improving the economy in not only the Commonwealth, but in your district as well, Senator.
Well, it's absolutely critical. As I said, Monty and I share some of the same jurisdictions, and as he also indicated, the geographical constraints of the Virginia Peninsula have us moving east-west. The main artery is I-64, and as I've told my friends on Southampton roads, be mindful that Interstate 64 running through James City County, York County, and the city of Newport News and Hampton is a gateway to Southampton roads to Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and they have been very, very supportive. I sit on the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, and both Monty and I are carrying some legislation on the corridor study. Also, I'm carrying a budget amendment for the Hampton Roads Transit, which would be dealing with public transportation and also with mass transit. We are not going to be able to build enough lanes on 64 to ever completely alleviate congestion. That's just a fact of life. The Americans, including myself, have this affection with their cars, and to do a cultural change and a mindset change is going to take generations and generations. But Monty made a very good point about the necessity of having reliable and timely public transportation, because there are a lot of people out there who rely upon it to go to work. And so I'm hopeful that through this corridor study that we can make some advancements in that regard, and I'm hoping that we can get some money through the budget amendment to try to put some infusion of capital into the Hampton Roads Transit Organization. So we're working very hard on that.
Great. Delegate Mason, how important is the Port of Virginia to your district and to the Commonwealth?
I think the Port of Virginia is the critical economic engine to the Commonwealth. Senator Norment's leadership in the Transportation Planning Organization, it's important we look south side and peninsula and all work together. I think up in the northern parts of our district, people aren't as aware of the ports as they should be. I mean, we have the best natural harbor on the East Coast. We're even talking about dredging it a little further for not the tankers that are coming, but even the next generation tankers. Right. This gives us a natural advantage. The previous administration did a lot of work on the rail corridors going out to get the cargo out, and we and our exports are very solid because 54% exports to 46% imports. I think is the number because of the natural harbor. We can load up the ships and get them out, and so the port should be a #1 conversation piece for us. I'm glad that we resisted the urge to think of leasing or selling the asset. I think it should be a Commonwealth of Virginia jewel, and we should do everything in our power to make sure it grows and thrives as it impacts us all.
Now, the Panama Canal is being refurbished, so these huge tanker ships will now be able to get through there, which is going to increase traffic to the Port of Virginia.
Absolutely. Monty made a very articulate presentation about how vital the ports are. And even though my friend, the Governor McDonald, proposed a privatization or concession on the port, I thought that was absolutely the wrong direction to go. The board at the port has been reconstituted. They've brought in some new personnel. They've had some record months here recently on the cargo, so I think we're moving in the right direction, but we need to protect it. I mean, Monty made it absolutely clear. We have the most outstanding natural port on the East Coast, but I can tell you, having been engaged in this conversation for the last couple of years, the Port of Savannah has their eyes on Virginia. We're at a 50-foot depth right now. We also have some funds that are available to take us to 55 feet, which would accommodate those supercargo Panamanian ships. But we need to be very mindful while we're trying to preserve and improve the asset that there is significant competition out there. We are talking huge dollars here, and the Port of Savannah has some advantages over us because of the interstate network that comes into the port, and they have some regional distribution centers right there. So we cannot idly sit by and talk about this and cogitate on it for a couple of years. We need to move and move timely, because if in fact we start losing a portion of the market share to Savannah or some other port on the East Coast, it'd be very challenging to recover it. I mean, this is a competitive business where the margins are very, very thin, and unlike Savannah, we have the ILA that is doing the work on the docks at our ports. There's been some discussion about whether or not it's appropriate for the Virginia Port Authority to be lobbying Congress and seeking money. How naive can you be? I was down in Georgia last fall doing some bird hunting, and I just met a gentleman for the first time, and he was asking me about Virginia's ports. And he said, I understand you guys had talked about privatizing it. He said, that is the craziest idea that I've ever heard. And he started talking about the Port of Savannah, and their port workers are state employees. And out of the profits that they make off the port, they fund their own retirement plan, and that's what they use as incentive. I said, how do you know so much? He says, well, in Georgia, the head of the ports in Savannah are appointed by the governor. I'm the head of the ports. But what was also interesting, he told me how aggressive that Georgia has been in going to Congress to seek money. The state doesn't have the money to improve the depth of their channels, and they have been lobbying Congress very enthusiastically to get that money, and we're up here talking about whether or not we ought to do this. It's interesting.
Well, another critical economic driver are our military installations.
Absolutely.
And also our returning veterans. Talk to us about the importance of both of those, the military installations and how we encourage veterans to become entrepreneurs.
Well, there have been a lot of presentations recently, not about just the ability to maintain our military bases, but the ability to grow them and try to attract the cybersecurity work that's coming, that's very topical in the world today, is something that I think the Virginia Peninsula in our area is well suited for. We do have a number of retirees. We talk in Williamsburg all the time about the students at William & Mary and trying to retain that intellectual capital. We have the same situation with the military. We have well-trained, disciplined, hard-working men and women that are already in our area and in our district. We have to continue to diversify our economy and try to find ways to keep them there, because it is of critical importance. One thing the governor has asked is that we have a military representative on his Council of Economic Estimates and economic revenue forecasting, just to make sure that there's a military component in every economic development decision-making discussion we have, because that is critical. We talk about working on both sides. You know, tourism is of vital importance to our area. We're having some conversation here in the Tourism Caucus about working with the South Side and working what we had, trying to work together again as we may have years in the past. But, you know, the military installations are things that attract people to come and see both the Naval Base and Langley, Fort Eustis, Camp Perry. You don't get to tour that very much, but it really is you know, as big an economic engine as the port is. We understand that, you know, we saw the effects of sequestration in our area. Virginia, you know, never hits the highest of highs or the lowest of lows because of our reliance on the military and the federal government. Well, we took a little bit bigger hit, and it's taken us a while to come out of this one because of the impact of sequestration. So we have to work towards how we can take care of our men and women in the military, how we can provide jobs and opportunities to keep them there upon the end of their service, and really, you know, look to what are natural assets that these people offer to help us in our district and across the Commonwealth.
And of course, we have now a retired admiral who is a member of the new governor's cabinet on the public safety side. And I know that's an issue that you have been an advocate of for a number of years, public safety. Talk to us about the importance of that appointment.
Well, I compliment Governor McAuliffe on that. He made, I think, some exceptional appointments in his cabinet. And bringing the Admiral in, I thought was truly a very insightful move. And this gentleman has spent a lot of time down in the Hampton Roads area. He's had a number of commands that have given him a diversity of exposure and experience. And it's not something that he has had to come into that position and learn what it is all about. It's not a vicarious experience he's had. He has learned it. It's been his career for 35 years, or I believe he said, somewhere in that neighborhood. Brings a wealth of insight and a wealth of talent into it, which I think is so critical. One of the things that Monty didn't touch on that is so critical to the presence of our military in both Southampton Roads and on the peninsula is protecting these bases. We've, a couple of years ago, created what's referred to as the FACT Fund, and that's providing access to money if there's some form of realignments or there's another BRAC. But also we have been funding, putting funds up for the acquisition of space around the Naval Air Station, and also more recently around Langley. The military is very concerned about noise impact. They're concerned about, you know, potential crash impacts, and we cannot ignore that vital part of our economy in Hampton Roads. So we've been moving through that FACT committee and also money to do land acquisition contiguous to the bases to make sure that we are remain receptive to the military. And going back a little bit to where we started, the transportation is absolutely critical. to the military, and I don't mean just in an evacuation sense. How many times do you drive down 64 and you pass a convoy, you know, Army or Navy or Marine troops that are moving through that area? So we need to be very mindful of the transportation needs that our military has.
Great. I want to give you an opportunity before I return to the center to talk about higher education. To talk a little bit about some of the legislation you're pursuing in the House of Delegates. I know you have something with regard to seniors and computer fraud, for example.
Sure. Just I have a goal to protect seniors from computer fraud. They really are more susceptible to the generations now are born and raised with computers and iPads and handheld devices. But those are also accessible to a lot of seniors now, but they don't have the experience. And then they also are susceptible to phone scams, but these computer scams, hey, you've got a virus on your computer, click here, for only $129, we'll take care of it, and it could offer. So I've tried to step up some penalties on that, really the fining element of it as much as anything, so we'll see how that goes. I also came in talking and focused on a lot of educational things. I've been working with, we seem to have a lot of momentum on the SOL world, and there's some bipartisan efforts in the House. I've been working to working with Rob Krapico on our side, who's working with Tad Greason to try to combine some ideas and see what we can do as far as just reducing the numbers, but making the test more assessment-based, more comprehensive, and multidisciplinary in their assessment of the students and what they're learning. Also, I had a lot of conversations with the superintendents coming in about the A through F grading system. The formula wasn't complete as the Board of Education voted to do so, so I have a bill that we're going to be hearing tomorrow with multiple others that delays that implementation, at least out 3 years. We've just changed the test that they're benchmarking the numbers off of. You know, it incorporates a lot of local factors, a lot of socioeconomic factors of the particular schools and the school areas, and delays the implementation of this grade for at least 3 years.
Great.
So we hope to set that aside and try to get a little more formulaic approach before we dive into just assigning one letter grade to a school.
And Senator, we know you've had a particular interest in higher education. We have renowned institutions of higher learning here. We have a great community college system. Talk to us about the importance of those institutions to the Commonwealth and its citizens.
I think Virginia is blessed that we have the most outstanding public higher education system in America. And that's just not my viewpoint. If annually you go look at, you know, any U.S. News and World Report, who always does a report on higher ed, and some of the other magazines, our college, public colleges and universities always rate outstanding. Recently I read that William & Mary was recognized as third in the country as far as having the best teaching performance on it, and we were only behind 2 Ivy League schools. We're just so blessed, and we can afford students from the Commonwealth of Virginia access to higher education, and we can afford them access with affordability, and that's been a focus for the last few years, both starting under the Warner administration and carrying through the Kane administration, and then Bob for Jobs and TJ21 program that we went through. And it's not just important about providing that quality education, but as Monty mentioned a moment ago, is trying to encourage these exceptional young people who are graduating from our public colleges and universities to stay in Virginia because they, in fact, are an intellectual asset and represent the future of Virginia. So it's just so critically important. And higher ed is big business. I mean, it is big business, and sometimes people don't pause to think about it. It is a business. Being the president of a college is probably more challenging than being a CEO of a major corporation. You have so many constituencies that you're trying to deal with, balancing academia against fundraising, against personnel issues with academic freedom that faculty are dealing with, and your classified workers who have issues for living wages and things. It's a tough job, but it is probably one of the most important assets that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we need to continue to start putting more resources into that. We need to be able to retain the promising young professors that other colleges and universities want to try to lure away with more impressive salaries. We need to continue to fund and stimulate research and development at our major research universities. We cannot afford to lose professors in research. When they leave, it's not one person leaving. It is an entire team that leaves, and so we just need to continue to keep our eye on the ball in that regard.
And Delegate Mason, the junior colleges play a critical role in training youngsters for jobs of the future and also transitioning adults who may have not fared well during the recession.
Well, it's community college, junior colleges. It's all about the adapting the education to the needs of the future. You know, and Senator Norment has been a champion for the College of William and Mary, and I'm an undergraduate there, and I went to him and said, hey, as a new person here, if there's any way I can help, I would appreciate the opportunity. But he's always looked out for the higher education, and now the community colleges and the junior colleges are critical important to us. It's a workforce development opportunity. It's a training opportunity for someone who has a job but wants to continue to grow in their job. The community colleges have expressed to me the interest that they have these specifically focused workforce. It might be training someone to be a welder, but that's tuition-based entirely. It is not, because it's not an academic track, it is much more costly. But it's something that we have jobs in the shipyard that are going unfilled today because we don't have qualified workers. So it's the importance of putting together and what we have to offer from an academic standpoint with the business community. And I think you saw a lot of that in the Chamber's Blueprint Virginia recent initiative. They start with education. And page one is early childhood education and making sure people get the proper education. But then it's workforce development, and it's training towards specific skills and these skilled opportunities that are solid, good-paying jobs. One mistake you can make in any industry, whether it's education, whether it's government, is looking the way we used to do things. You know, this worked 20 years ago, worked 10 years ago. Well, the company I work for is leading edge, and our smartest people are figuring out how we cope and how we deal with the future and the way things are changing. We have to do that in government, and we have to do that in education.
Senator, we've got about 30 seconds left, believe it or not, but I do want you to comment on mental health reform because one of your colleagues suffered a tragedy recently.
Well, I think everyone that saw Senator Creed Deeds on 60 Minutes on Sunday night and on Anderson Cooper has enormous empathy for what he's been through. And to come through that tragedy and be willing to get out and advocate reform on mental health is very courageous on his part. And I applaud him thunderously about it. It's a tragedy, but it's refocused us on mental health. We made some reforms after the Virginia Tech tragedy. We didn't think that was the final answer to it, but it was an incremental step. And Senator Deeds' tragedies remind us that we need to do more, and we will do more.
Thank you for being here, Delegate Monty Mason, Senator Tommy Norment. Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.